You ever give everything to a job, your time, your sleep, your sanity, only to be tossed aside like you were nothing? That's what happened to me. For 6 years, I was the backbone of that company. I was the first one in every morning, the last one out every night. Birthdays, holidays, anniversaries. Missed them all because I was chasing deadlines and managing chaos that no one else wanted to touch. I built systems from scratch, salvaged failing projects, and pulled entire departments back from the brink. People used to say, if you want it done right, give it to Jordan. And I wore that like a badge of honor. I wasn't the loudest voice in the room. I wasn't flashy, but I was reliable, consistent, loyal. I thought that counted for something. My manager, Claire, she used to call me her secret weapon. We weren't friends, not exactly, but we had a rhythm. She'd throw problems my way, and I'd solve them before they exploded. That was our unspoken contract. I thought she respected me. Hell, I thought she valued me. Then came the restructuring. It was a Friday morning when I got the calendar invite. 15 minutes, quick touch base. That's all it said. No agenda, no subject line. My stomach turned before I even clicked accept. I walked into her office and she couldn't even look me in the eye. She said the words like she'd rehearsed them. With the recent budget cuts, we've had to make some tough decisions. Unfortunately, your role has been deemed non-essential. Non-essential, like all those late nights, the weekends I sacrificed, the problems I fixed, meant absolutely nothing. I sat there, stunned, blinking at her like maybe I'd misheard. I asked if there was another position, if I could shift into a different department, if I could take a pay cut until things stabilized. She shook her head like she was sorry, like this wasn't personal. But it was personal. I'd trained half the team she kept. I was holding that department together with duct tape and willpower, and she chose to cut me, to save budget, she said. I walked out of that office feeling like the floor had been ripped from under me. The company badge in my hand felt like a piece of trash. People were whispering by the elevators, avoiding eye contact. No one said goodbye. 6 years, gone in 15 minutes. And as I stepped into the parking lot, with a cardboard box full of memories and a heart full of rage, one thought kept echoing in my mind. She didn't just fire me, she underestimated me. And that was her biggest mistake. The first week after I got fired, I didn't leave my apartment. I wish I could say I took it in stride, updated my resume, and bounced back like those motivational stories you see online. But that wasn't me. I didn't eat, I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch in the same pair of sweatpants, replaying that meeting over and over again, like a punishment reel I couldn't stop watching. Non-essential. I kept hearing it, even in silence. Every time I passed the mirror, I barely recognized myself. This wasn't just about losing a job. It was about losing identity. I'd built my life around that work, around being the person people could count on. Without it, who the hell was I? And then there was Claire. I couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she avoided my eyes when she let me go. The calculated way she spoke, like the decision had been made long before she clicked send on that meeting invite. It wasn't just business. It felt like betrayal. I didn't want to be paranoid, but the longer I sat in that silence, the more pieces started falling into place. Pieces I hadn't paid attention to before. A few months before I was let go, Claire started asking me to document every little thing I did. Processes, project breakdowns, contact lists. Just in case, she'd said. We need backup knowledge. I thought she was being responsible. Turns out she was preparing to make me replaceable. Then there was Greg, one of the newer hires, sharp but green. I'd taken him under my wing, helped him get up to speed. Just before I was fired, I noticed he'd been sitting in on more meetings with Claire. Strategic ones I usually handled. At the time, I thought she was grooming him for leadership. Now I knew the truth. I was being phased out. And it didn't stop there. One night, about 2 weeks after losing my job, I met up with Hannah, a friend from another department. We hadn't talked since the layoff, and I wasn't even sure I wanted to go. But cabin fever got the best of me. Over drinks, she hesitated. Then she said, I don't know if I should tell you this, but people are talking. Talking about what? Claire's budget story doesn't add up. They didn't freeze all hires. In fact, they brought on 2 consultants just last week. I froze. Consultants? She nodded. Yeah, external, big retainer contracts too. And just like that, the room went cold. Claire had said the budget was tight, that my role was no longer sustainable, but she'd turned around and hired outside consultants less than 2 weeks later. It didn't make sense, unless it was personal. Unless I wasn't just laid off to save money. I was removed to make space. I couldn't prove it, not yet, but something was off, deeply off. So I started digging. Not in a wild, obsessive way, not at first. Just small things, checking LinkedIn, watching company updates, scanning through public records for new contractor names. And that's when I saw it. One of the consultants they brought on, Greg's older brother, same last name, same city, different industries, until now. That couldn't be a coincidence. I felt my hands tremble on the mouse. Greg, who I'd trained, who Claire started favoring, he had family connections, and I had unknowingly handed over all my processes, all my systems, like a fool. I didn't just give away my job. I'd built the playbook for my replacement, and Claire, she'd played the long game. There was no budget crisis. There was a plan, and I had been the only one who didn't know I was a pawn in it. I wish I could say I got angry right then, that I slammed the laptop shut and declared war, but all I felt was hollow. I had been loyal, blinded by it, and that loyalty had been used against me, and the worst part, I still didn't know the whole story. But now, I needed to, because something told me. This went even deeper than I thought. It's funny how clarity doesn't come like a lightning bolt. It comes in fragments, quiet little moments that, when pieced together, form a picture you can't unsee. After I found out Greg's brother had been hired as a consultant, something in me switched. The numbness faded. In its place, something colder settled in. Focus. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to sit in silence and replay the betrayal. I was going to find out exactly what had happened, and then I was going to decide what to do with it. I didn't have access to company emails anymore, but I had saved copies of a few key project threads that, in hindsight, painted a damning picture. One thread in particular stood out. It was an email Claire had forwarded to me with the subject line, FYI, start prepping. At the time, I assumed it was about a client presentation, but reading it now, with new eyes, I saw the original sender was Greg, and he'd written, I spoke to Nick. He's ready to step in. Just need to make sure Jay finishes documentation before EOM Nick. That had to be his brother, and Jay was me. They weren't just planning to offload me, they were plotting a quiet handoff. And Claire, she wasn't just complicit, she was orchestrating it. I began to trace timelines. Greg started sitting in on strategic meetings in September. By October, Claire began asking me to draft detailed documentation for continuity. November was when I trained Greg on systems he had no business learning yet. And by the first week of December, I was out. It was too clean, too calculated. But I needed more than implication. I needed hard proof. So I reached out to someone I wasn't sure would talk to me, Martin. Martin had worked in procurement. We weren't close, but we'd always respected each other's grind. I figured if anyone would know about contracts being signed off quietly, it was him. I messaged him casually, asked if he'd heard about the consultants Claire brought on. He responded almost instantly. Oh, you mean the friends and family plan? I stared at the message. I asked him what he meant. He sent a screenshot. It was an internal thread. Procurement approvals. And there it was. Plain as day. Nicholas Stanton, independent consultant, 6-month retainer, $180,000 contract, approved by Claire, filed 3 weeks before I was let go. I sat back, staring at the screen. She didn't just replace me, she hired Greg's brother with a bigger paycheck and passed it off as downsizing. I felt sick, betrayed. But underneath it all, something else began to rise. Determination. I wasn't going to fight this by begging for my job back or ranting online. I was going to be smarter than that, sharper. I was going to let her build her house of lies, and I was going to be the one to light the match when the time was right. So, I got to work. I reached out to 2 former clients, ones I'd had close relationships with during my time at the company. I told them, vaguely, that I was now consulting independently and available for specialized work. I didn't mention Claire. I didn't have to. My name carried weight. One of them replied within hours. The other set up a call for later that week. Meanwhile, I built a dossier, every email I had access to, every Slack message I'd saved, every file that showed how I created and led the systems they were still using. And then I contacted an old friend from college, Marcy, who now worked in employment law. I didn't know if I had a case, but I needed clarity. Marcy reviewed everything I sent and got quiet on the phone. Then she said, "Jordan, this is classic wrongful termination disguised as downsizing. And if that contract with Greg's brother was approved before your termination, you might be looking at fraud. At minimum, unethical hiring practices. Maybe more." My hands tightened around the phone. I asked her if I should go public. She paused. "Not yet. Build leverage. You only get one shot at this. Make it count." So I waited. I let the silence grow, and as I waited, something shifted in me. I wasn't that desperate, broken person sitting on my couch anymore. I wasn't just the victim of a betrayal. I was a strategist now. Every move I made was deliberate. Every conversation, calculated. I started posting casually on LinkedIn, industry tips, case studies, stories from past projects. It was bait and people bit. A few even reached out to ask if I'd consult for them. And then, about 4 weeks after I'd been fired, I got a message from Claire. Just one line. "Would you be open to a quick call?" I stared at it for a long time before smiling. Now, this was going to be interesting. I didn't respond to Claire right away. I let her sit in that digital silence for 24 hours. I wanted her to feel ignored. Wonder if I was angry, if I was plotting something, if I was just biding my time. And I was. When I finally replied, I kept it brief. "Sure, I'm available tomorrow at 10 a.m. She sent back a calendar invite within minutes, just like old times. But this wasn't like old times. This wasn't me being summoned to take orders. This time, I was in control. The next morning, I put on my cleanest button-down shirt and set up my laptop in the sunniest corner of my apartment. I wasn't doing this in pajamas. I wanted her to see me calm, composed and unfazed. I wanted her to feel the distance between us, the one she had created. She logged onto the call right on time, hair perfect, smile rehearsed. "Jordan," she said, like nothing had ever happened. "It's good to see you." "Is it?" I replied flatly. Her smile flickered, just for a second. Then she pressed on. "I'll get right to the point. We've been having some unexpected gaps in execution since your departure. And some of the systems you designed, well, frankly, no one understands them like you do. We're considering bringing on a consultant to fill in temporarily. And I thought of you." I stared at her for a moment, pretending to weigh my words. Then I leaned forward. "Claire," I said, "do you mean before or after you gave my playbook to Greg's brother and handed him a $180,000 contract?" Silence. She blinked. The kind of blink that said, "Oh shit, how much does he know?" Jordan, I'm not sure what you're referring to." "Oh, come on," I said, voice like ice. "I saw the procurement records. I saw the internal emails. You planned my removal down to the day. The documentation requests, the meetings Greg started attending, the timing of the contract. You didn't downsize. You replaced me with someone connected to your golden boy." Her face flushed, just a touch. "That's a serious accusation." "And I've got serious evidence," I shot back. "You can spare me the innocent act. What I want to know is, what exactly do you want from me now?" She straightened up, posture shifting from defensive to diplomatic. "Look, Jordan, let's be honest, we need you. Nick hasn't been able to manage the systems you created. He doesn't understand the infrastructure. We're hemorrhaging time and money trying to backfill what you built. I'm offering you a short-term consulting contract, triple your previous rate, flexible terms. You choose the hours." I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was validation. She didn't care about loyalty. She didn't care about integrity. She only cared about value. And now, ironically, I was more valuable to her outside the company than I ever was inside it. I leaned back in my chair and let that silence stretch. Then I smiled. "You'll get a contract draft from me by end of day," I said. "Triple my old salary, all hours tracked, no last-minute calls, payment due bi-weekly, no exceptions. And Claire, yes, if you try to play me again, ever, I'll release the documents. I have the threads, the financials. I have a lawyer on standby, and trust me, she loves wrongful termination cases. Her mouth tightened. I'm not here to burn bridges, I continued, but I'm not here to build yours for free either. You need me, you pay, and from now on, we're not colleagues, we're business. She nodded slowly. Understood. I ended the call without saying goodbye. The second I shut my laptop, my hands started shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. 6 weeks ago, I'd been broken, lost, tossed aside by a woman I thought respected me, and now, she was paying me triple just to keep her sinking ship afloat. I didn't celebrate, not yet. Instead, I called Marcy, my lawyer, and filled her in. You played it perfectly, she said. Just remember, if they screw up again, we don't warn them next time. We sue. I hung up and stared out the window. The city looked different now. Not because it had changed, because I had. I wasn't the loyal workhorse anymore. I wasn't the silent fixer in the shadows. I was a strategist. And now, I named the price. Word traveled fast. Within days of me stepping in as a paid consultant, it became clear to the entire company. Claire had made a mess she couldn't clean up. Departments were reaching out to me directly, bypassing her altogether. They needed access to the systems I'd built, guidance on client reports, updates on compliance workflows. And I gave them what they needed, but only on my terms. Greg, he barely looked me in the eye during Zoom meetings. I didn't rub it in, didn't have to. Everyone could see he was in way over his head. Turns out, copying someone's work doesn't make you capable. It just makes you dependent. And Claire, she unraveled slowly. The more I delivered results, the more isolated she became. Whispers started circulating. Questions were asked in board meetings. Why was I fired in the first place if the company now needed to pay triple to bring me back? Why was her consultant, Nick, suddenly phased out with no explanation? The CFO started sniffing around. Procurement had to pull records. And when they did, everything unraveled. The timeline was too neat. The approval dates didn't match the official statements. And when Martin, quiet, meticulous Martin, was asked to verify the contract details, he didn't lie. He showed them the original thread with Claire's signature time-stamped before I was terminated. Claire was asked to step down a week later. They didn't fire her, not officially. That's not how corporations work. They offered her a graceful exit. She resigned to pursue other opportunities. But inside the company, everyone knew what had really happened. Her golden boy, Greg, transferred departments quietly. I heard he was benched indefinitely. And Nick, his contract was terminated within days. As for me, I finished the consulting work with surgical precision. Every task, every deliverable, no overreach, no emotion, just business. When the final invoice was paid, I submitted a short thank you email. And then I walked away. But closure doesn't come all at once. Some nights, I still felt the sting of it all, the betrayal, the humiliation, the way people I trusted had watched me fall without so much as a text. There were days when the anger bubbled back up, when I'd remember how Claire avoided eye contact as she cut me loose. But more often than not, I felt something else. Peace. Because I hadn't just survived. I had outmaneuvered them. And while they lost their titles, their contracts, their reputations, I had built something of my own. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. It's been 8 months since that call with Claire. 8 months since I stopped defining my worth by someone else's title, salary band, or performance review. Since I realized the only person who ever truly had my back was me. After I wrapped up the consulting contract, I took a break. A real one. No job boards, no LinkedIn updates, just silence, reflection, and rest. At first, I wasn't sure what to do with myself. For years, my entire identity had been tied to being indispensable to someone else's dream. But the space I found outside of that grind, it gave me room to think about what I actually wanted, not just to be successful, but to be free. I took a trip to the coast, first time I'd taken more than a weekend off in 5 years. I walked along the beach, watched the waves roll in, and realized something I hadn't allowed myself to feel since the day I got fired. I was finally okay. No more checking my phone at midnight for last-minute urgent emails. No more sacrificing my weekends to patch someone else's mistakes. No more pretending that loyalty to a company was the same thing as loyalty to yourself. I decided to launch my own consultancy. Nothing flashy, just me, a website, and a handful of trusted clients I'd worked with over the years. But it grew, quickly. Word of mouth spread faster than I expected. Turns out, when you deliver results without ego or politics, people remember. Now, I choose who I work with. I set my own hours. I protect my time. And I don't ever let someone else dictate my value again. And the best part? I've started mentoring younger professionals, people who remind me of who I used to be, hungry, loyal, willing to burn themselves out for a pat on the back. I teach them the lesson it took me years to learn. Your worth doesn't come from being useful to people who wouldn't flinch before cutting you loose. It comes from knowing your value, even when no one else sees it. Emotionally, I've grown more than I thought possible. I don't walk into rooms trying to prove myself anymore. I don't shrink back when someone questions my price, my experience, or my boundaries. I've learned to say no without guilt. I've learned to walk away from anything that asks me to trade peace for validation. Claire's name came up recently in a client meeting. She's freelancing now. I didn't say much, just nodded and changed the subject. I don't carry bitterness anymore, not because she didn't deserve it, but because I do. I deserve peace. I deserve forward motion. And I deserve a life that isn't built on being essential to anyone but myself. Some scars still linger. I won't pretend. Otherwise. But they're not wounds anymore. They're reminders of how far I've come, how sharp I've become, and how betrayal was never the end of my story. It was the beginning of the one I was always meant to write. Looking back now, I realized something I couldn't see in the moment. Sometimes the greatest betrayal is the one that sets you free. When Claire fired me, I thought I'd lost everything, my purpose, my career, my identity. But what I really lost was the illusion that loyalty guarantees protection, that being indispensable means you're safe, that if you just work hard enough, sacrifice enough, give enough, they'll never let you go. That's not how the world works. People will use you as long as it's convenient, and when it's not, they'll rewrite the story without you, even if you built the damn plot. But here's what I've learned. You are not what they paid you. You are not the title on a business card or the name on a project slide. You are what you survive. You are what you rebuild after the storm. Resilience isn't loud. It doesn't always look like revenge or courtroom victories. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's saying, I deserve better, and then proving it not to them, but to yourself. And justice? It doesn't always come wrapped in dramatic payback. Sometimes justice is living well in spite of them. Sometimes it's watching the people who underestimated you come back, not with apologies, but with offers, and realizing you're no longer waiting for their approval. To anyone who's been blindsided, discarded, or made to feel like they were replaceable, I want you to hear me when I say this. You are not broken, you are becoming. What they took from you was temporary. What you build next, that's yours forever. Don't beg to be kept in rooms where the doors were always meant to close. Build your own, name your worth. And when they come knocking again, because they will, make sure they understand. You're no longer the one looking for a seat at their table. You are the table, and you'll decide who gets to sit.